Have you checked the children? Your little master.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes that is better.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Long days and pleasant nights, fellow travelers. Along the path of the beam, I am known on this level of the tower as Jaime in Fuego, and if it please you, join me here for a bit of palaver on Hail to Stephen King. That's right, all of those books that you see behind me, my favorite author. You can just call me Fuego for short, and I welcome you to this weekly segment here on The Horror Show. Nearly 200 episodes of this program now, just a few installments away. Super stoked, and we do this Book of the Month thing here on Hail to Stephen King, and the Book of the Month for December was none other than The Talisman. That's right, the collaborative effort between Peter Straub and Cy King. That's right, their first of two collaborative efforts, with the sequel being Black House, obviously, which was much more tied in with the proverbial tower, so to speak. Still rumors of a third installment coming at some point in time, since both of them are getting up there in their years. But yeah, so I was originally going to hold off on doing this comic review until like the actual anniversary, but you know, we're kind of like right in that sweet spot in the middle, and since the last episode was our live book of the month discussing The Talisman for its 35th anniversary, I figured why the hell not? Let's talk about the Del Rey Books version of The Talisman. That's right. So it says Volume 1, The Road of Trials. There was actually supposed to be a sequel because, yeah, this only covers about like the first third of the book-ish, you know, somewhere around there. And that sequel was supposed to be called A Collision of Worlds, and it was announced and then unfortunately canceled, presumably due to scant sales on this initial installment. But I mean, it's a really badass adaptation, and it is celebrating its 10th anniversary this year. So essentially in July of 2009 at the San Diego International Comic-Con, they did a zero issue, which basically it was like a prequel to the actual story elements, you know, here in the graphic novel proper, and the 5 issues that came afterwards. But really, I mean, it says that it's a never-before-seen prologue, but it's really just pieces that we got in the novel proper, but just placed as opposed to in flashbacks, like at the beginning, like they would chronologically. But yeah, I mean, if you're not familiar, just in, you know, jumping onto this review, this is all about Jack Sawyer. And Jack Sawyer's mother is none other than the Queen of the Bees. That's right, Lily Kavanaugh. And she is a once famous actress that is now dying from cancer, unfortunately. And not only that, her husband and brother-in-law were both killed mysteriously. And as is revealed in both this and the novel, yes, both of those men were killed by none other than Morgan Sloat, who is the business partner, longtime business partner of Jack Sawyer's father. And yeah, he has nefarious purposes. He is basically trying to get Jack's mother, Lily, to sign over the rest of his father's company, you know, and just basically take complete control. And that's only half of the story, though, because the other half is the fact that Jack, just like his father, has this ability to jump between worlds. Yes, and the jumping between worlds is between our level of existence, our level, Keystone Earth, whatever the hell you want to call it, of the tower, and a place called the Territories. And basically, the Talisman sowed the seeds, in my estimation, in a lot of ways for what King was going to later develop significantly in Dark Tower books, you know, 2, 3, 4, 4.5, all the way to 7, and so on. So essentially, there is some retconning that happens over the course of the novel, where, you know, the Talisman is supposed to be, you know, like, you know, the Talisman, at least in the original novel, is essentially the equivalent of what the Dark Tower becomes as King developed all the lore with that particular series and all of its tie-in novels and stuff like that, which is why Black House, you know, ties in so much more significantly with, you know, the Breakers and all this different stuff. But I'm not here to talk about all that. If you want to do some deep dive into all of that crazy awesomeness, then yes, watch the live review or just read Stephen King, as I always implore people to do. But yeah, this is a pretty awesomely adapted book. It's just really a shame that we didn't get the full extent of the story, because this is very, very well done. So it is scripted by none other than Robin Firth, and Robin Firth was really the spearhead behind the Dark Tower comic books that Marvel did, and she basically was King's like personal assistant for a number of years, and essentially helped him keep all of the Dark Tower stuff in context. You know, she was like the fact checker for him, essentially. She was like the Dark Tower, you know, biographer of sorts, if you really want to, you know, put it that way. And so, yeah, she was the one that made sure everything lined up, everything was consistent, and often reminded him, okay, no, you can't do that because, you know, you did this in a previous volume. And so, yeah, she was the one that kind of, all the ideas were coming from Cy King, but yet she just kind of helped make sure that, I don't know, it's like, you know, the pit team that basically helps out the driver. You know, King is the driver, and Robin was like the head of the pit team. That's the best way I can describe it. It's probably because I watched Ford versus Ferrari recently, and so that, you know, that's the best analogy I can think of. But it really kind of makes sense, you know? And so, whereas there were tons and tons of volumes of the Dark Tower comics, I mean, they did 3 different actual like arcs, and each arc had multiple volumes within it. You know, they got all the way up to pretty much the Wastelands, more or less, and they did most of Wizard and Glass as well, which, you know, chronologically takes place before, but we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about the Talisman, obviously, and the Road of Trials. And so Robin does a terrific job of adapting this, and, you know, just paying proper homage to both, you know, Cy King and Straub. And, yeah, the artwork is by someone by the name of Tony Chastain, and I'm not sure the extent of, let's see what Tony has done before. This book has been penciled and inked by Tony Chastain, who's been an illustrator since 1995. His clients have included Coca-Cola, NASCAR, Hasbro, and DC Comics, among many others. And about Robin, they say, co-writes Marvel's best-selling Dark Tower comics, taking place in Stephen King's Dark Tower universe. She worked as King's research assistant between 2000 and 2004, as I said. So, yeah, really great, great team behind this. And, I mean, just to give you kind of a cool little idea of the artwork, I mean, this territory is this other world that Jack Sawyer jumps back and forth between, and, you know, with a name like Jack Sawyer, yeah, you can pretty much figure out that this is definitely Mark Twain inspired when Straub and King came together to do this. But, I mean, the art is really cool, and it doesn't shy away from blood. I mean, check that out. Yep, it gets a little grotesque at times. And, I mean, we've got, so Jack essentially, his mother is in hiding from that villainous Morgan Sloat, you know, the former business partner of his father. And so they're at this Alhambra hotel in New Hampshire, I believe it is. And, yeah, he befriends this dude by the name of Speedy Parker, who works, or Parkus, as he is known on the other side. And basically, this dude who works at the amusement park, this older black guy, he basically reminds Jack, as you can see, that you can become dim and that you have the ability to jump between worlds. And he thought that they were only daydreams, you know, when he was a little kid, but no, that was in fact some real shizzle, and they had in fact met previously, you know, 5 years before when Jack was much, much younger, because he's like just about to be a teenager. He's like, what, 11, 12 in this story, 12, something like that. And yeah, but there was a particular time when these dudes attempted to kidnap him, these dudes who are, you know, in conjunction with Morgan Sloat, that evil business partner of his father's. And yeah, these dudes tried to kidnap him back in California, which is where, you know, Jack was living with his mother and his father before, you know, he passed and everything. And yeah, Parkus, or Parker, Speedy, you know, he saves him, essentially. He calls attention to these dudes that are trying to give him candy and, you know, get him into their vehicle. And so they had met previously, and Parker has the ability to jump back and forth, and he reminds Jack of this and basically tells him, yeah, your mother is dying of cancer. Well, your mother has a twin in this other world. Most people have other twins in this alternate universe, these territories, basically, which is, it's very Dark Tower-esque, you know. I mean, well, it's pretty much in all world, you know, just like in that book. In fact, Roland Deschain, at one particular point in a story called The Little Sisters of Eluria, walks through the same pavilion, and yet it's all dead and destitute and like abandoned and stuff, that Jack actually goes through in this particular story, and it's all, you know, lively and, you know, full of vendors and guards and, you know, just throngs of people and all this other stuff. So yeah, basically Parkus is like, kid, you need to jump over into the territories just like your dad used to do, just like your dad told Morgan Bloat, as he keeps calling him, but Sloat, you know, and yeah, so he's like, you need to jump over and you need to get from this coast all the way over to the other coast, get to this black hotel where there is this talisman, because this talisman can not only save your mother who's dying of cancer, but it can also save her twin, who is her twinner, as they call it in the story, who is, you know, the queen of the territories, and yeah, she is in this coma. So it's funny how, like, if you have a twin on the other side of twinner, they all too often, like, they have corresponding, whether ailments, successes, whatever, and anything that happens on our side of the world resonates in the territories and vice versa. There's an earthquake at one particular point in the story that, you know, they feel the aftershocks on the other side. And, you know, one thing that I don't necessarily like about the Talisman, and I don't think that I even mentioned this when I was doing my live book review, I'm not super fond of the fact that when the jumping between worlds transpires, the attire changes. So it goes from, you know, the regular clothes that Jack is wearing into, you know, these like more world proper clothing just from flipping. And also when you flip, things change from like guitar picks to like it's like a bone or something, or a tooth, or I can't remember exactly. But nonetheless, I mean, despite things like that I may have some qualms with, it's a really captivating and dope story, and I just love stories of childhood adventure. And I mean, it's some of the best stuff that King's ever written, whether it's, you know, The Body, which was turned into Stand By Me, whether it's recent stuff like The Institute. I mean, yeah, King writes kids very compellingly and believably, which is, it's definitely adapted very well in this particular story. And so while Jack initially needs this hooch that, you know, Speedy has given him to jump back and forth, and it's interesting because, you know, distance and time don't really play out in the same fashion as they do in our world. I mean, if you go like X amount of distance in the territories, it's a much more significant distance on our side. And so, yeah, I mean, he can make his journey quicker on the territory side, but unfortunately there's like a lot more, well, not even a lot more danger, because Jack encounters different dangers depending on what side he's on. You know, he's trying to, like when he flips back to our side, he's trying to hitchhike, and he's this 12-year-old kid, you know, basically trying to hitchhike across the country. That doesn't look very good. You're supposed to be in school, kid. Where the hell are your parents? All of those different arguments that pretty much any adult he would encounter is going to toss at him. And so he sets off on his journey after meeting up with this, you know, with this captain of the guard, this Farron, I want to say dude's name is, and he has this scar and everything, and he's the one who Parker had told him, you know, to meet initially and then to head out on the journey. But yeah, as you can see, Morgan Sloat, our chubby Perlon, when he jumps between the worlds, yeah, you can see his attire changes, and so he has an evil twinner on his other side that he's kind of working in conjunction with, so to speak. And yeah, it's a pretty dope story, I must admit. It's just, once again, it's incredibly sad that we did not get the full extent of the adaptation. So we got the issue 0, and then, you know, which is the like prologue kind of thing that I was mentioning, and then we've got you know, these 5 issues proper. And oh man, I forgot about this scene where this kid, they're trying to get a bunch of ale to you know, to the pavilion and to the kingdom over there you know, so on, and this kid falls off, and like he gets like run over by the horses, and his head's all like smushed in and disgusting looking and stuff. There's some cool stuff with like a living forest a la Mortal Kombat 2, which is pretty dope. But yeah, so Jack does a lot of flipping back and forth, and he basically, in the Talisman proper, he finds himself imprisoned in a couple different situations, and the first one is most notably at this place called the Oatly Tap. And this guy Smokey basically, here's where he's like, I need work so I can, you know, get back into the groove, you know, back in the New York groove, if we're gonna make another Dark Tower reference, Dark Tower 3 Wastelands with Jake. But yeah, so he goes and starts working at this tap room, this bar and grill, and he basically becomes like this indentured servant / slave to this Smokey guy, because Smokey knows he's got him by the balls, and he knows this, and, you know, Jack is on the run, and for that reason, he just kind of has him. It makes me wonder why he actually goes along with this sort of, you know, slavery for as long as he does, as opposed to just jumping right back into the territories, because it takes him an encounter with this, like, shape changer dude, you know, who is one of the minions of, you know, Morgan and the other Morgan on the other side in the territories before he jumps over. And, yeah, I mean, really, for the most part, I mean, we do get some stuff like this whole thing about this dude Bledsoe, who is the personification of when things happen on one side, they can actually reverberate even worse on the other side. This dude who gets like electrocuted to death, you see it actually transpire in issue 0, and there's like a few callbacks and reminders to it later on. But it's a real shame that we get one of my favorite Side King characters, and maybe like, you know, Jack is friends with Morgan Sloat's son, Richard, and they actually, you know, he's at this boarding school, and, you know, it's, you know, he basically is who Jack spends the second half of the novel proper with, but the first, like, good chunk, once he finally makes his companion, he befriends this, whoa, here and now. I don't like the way they illustrated him, though. Like, look at how much older he is. That wouldn't really make any sense for this huge werewolfy dude, because, you know, Wolf turns into a werewolf at various times, and how is he going to end up in this boarding school, you know, this place where, so in the second place that Jack is essentially imprisoned in, and that's what Collision of Worlds would have definitely tackled, is this, oh boy, it's something Lighthouse or House of Light or whatever. Anyway, it's this reformatory for you know, bad kids, essentially, boys, you know, in particular. And yeah, there's like this religious indoctrination and, you know, just all kinds of abuse going down at this particular place. And yeah, I don't see how that huge wolf dude would have been taken in as a kid. That is where they definitely messed up in this. But you only see him here and now at the very end of the book, so, you know, it is what it is. But yeah, so after the July debut of this comic book, with issue 0 at Comic-Con, they started publishing it proper in October 21st, 2009 was when the first issue came out, and it was published through March of 2010, and then they put out this hardcover in May of 2010. So yes, it is the 10-year anniversary of Stephen King and Peter Straub's adaptation by Robin Firth, and once again the name of the artist, who I dig his work in here so much, Tony Chastain. Colors by Nai Rufino and J.D. Metler, and then lettering was done by Bill Tortolini. But yeah, this was done by Del Rey Books, so maybe that had something to do with it. I'm not sure what like the print run or the circulation of this was. Probably nowhere near the size of what, you know, Marvel is able to put out in stores, you know, because Marvel was able to do their full run of the Dark Tower series, those 3 different arcs, until the rights lapsed and went back to Scribner, I believe, or maybe it's Doubleday, I don't know. Whoever King is with now, the rights are back with his main book publisher, and they're in the process of starting to re-release those Dark Tower books. I just recently did a video all about the Dark Tower comics. It was like a reading guide, and it was telling all of you just, you know, what is coming out when, what is already in circulation, but unfortunately out of print. So if you guys have any inclination to check out that, it is in the Stephen King themed playlist that we have here on the Horror Show. But yeah, I would imagine that because of the fact that this wasn't done by a biggie like Marvel, who did both the Stand and the Dark Tower adaptations, that probably had a hand in the fact that the story was regrettably never completed. It's a super bummer, but at least we have this. It's better than nothing, I guess. And yes, I definitely cannot recommend enough The Talisman. It doesn't really streamline the story in some terrible fashion either. Obviously, you're not going to get as much description and exposition and all that different stuff like you do in the novel, but this is a very strong and solid adaptation of the source material. So I have been Jaime and Fuego. Y'all can find moi on all social media sectors like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, where I have my own channel called In Fuegotainment. That's right, you can just go youtube.com/Jaime and Fuego to get over there. I didn't do anything with that channel for over a year, almost like a year and a half. The Horror Show is my sole focus, but in the year of 19, I decided to jump back on it, put some diligent efforts into it, and I did dozens of reviews of, you know, all kinds of films of the non-horrific variety, comedies, comic book films, art house dramas, tons of Star Wars stuff, both comics, novels, and just a look back at some of the films, review of Rise of Skywalker, all kinds of different things. So yes, if you have any inclination, porfa y gracias. I would really appreciate it if you go over there, like, share, and subscribe. And definitely do the same thing here if you haven't. Yes, we appreciate you jumping on here. And I have to also mention every Monday evening, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, I guest on the Will Escridia YouTube channel with CP. And from my 2 cents of nonsense, Lindsay Mimsy, as I so affectionately call him, for a program called Show Business, where we talk about weekend box office numbers, look ahead and make some predictions, and have a little bit of palaver about the biggest entertainment stories of the previous week. And then lastly, have to mention the Hail to Stephen King Facebook group. That's where we have daily discussion, all kinds of dope status palaver about everything of the Cy King family. So we do have Run to the Hill, which is just my little segment about Joe Hill and, you know, anything Owen or Tabby, and obviously El Rey himself, as I so affectionately call him. And just a reminder, the January book of the month, since it did just celebrate a couple months ago at the end of the year of 19 in November, its 10-year anniversary, the January book of the month is none other than this massive mofo right here under the dome. Yes, it is a big effort if you want to try to get through that. But yes, I just started it the other day. Very much looking forward to our live book of the month discussion about it on Saturday, February 1st. So we all have that to look forward to. So once more, I've been Fuego. Y'all have been awesome. And until the wheel of Ka comes around once more, hasta luego, sin amigos, and constant viewers and readers alike, say thank you. But I'm hopeful that we get to share more of this palaver sooner rather than later. And until then, stay scared and read Stephen King. And Peter Straub. Why the hell not?